This breakout session is about how a Fortune 100 firm seamlessly moved from mainframe to AWS. As you know, if you get it right, and if you do it right, it is not difficult to move mainframe ecosystem to cloud. The authority, the experience we have with the panelists today is going to discuss how did enterprise like MassMutual go ahead migrating mainframe applications to cloud. Let's welcome our panelists today. Bill Murphy from MassMutual, a 170-year-old enterprise with around 895 billion of insurance policy in the market, successfully have migrated mainframe applications to cloud. Bill is going to share with us his experience. How did he go about doing this? Bill, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Let me also welcome Maddie Reddy from AWS. She leads worldwide mainframe modernization charter. She works with customers similar to MassMutual and help them seamlessly modernize the applications. Thanks, Maddie, for joining us today.
My pleasure.
And my colleague, Phil. Phil is a CTO in DXC, in insurance business in Americas region. Phil is going to share his experience. How does DXC help customers migrate the applications, mainframe applications to cloud? Let me introduce myself, Sam Matthew. I'm a vice president and a lead for cloud and infrastructure services at DXC. DXC, as you know, is a global leader in consulting and IT services across the globe. Thanks for coming and joining us today. Let's start with Phil. Phil, let's talk about the big picture to start with.
Yeah, I think you'll find that insurance, not uniquely from an industry perspective, is feeling the pressures of cost reductions and the ability to be flexible and move with the modernization, the digital realities that we're faced with today. And part of it is twofold. The regulatory compliance challenges that they have mean that you've got to maintain policies until the holder can no longer hold it. These can last 60, 70, 80 years and more now with increased life expectancies. In addition to that, you've got the need to be more flexible as new entrants, the progressives of the world, lemonades of the world, new fleet businesses who are more flexible, less rigidly built than we've seen in our traditional elements. So the sector in general is faced by the need to modernize legacy systems, those that are older but you want to do away with, and heritage, those that you need to maintain in one way, shape, or form, while at the same time becoming more digital. And bringing those two together is really the essence of how you stay ahead of the game, and something that MassMutual has mastered in bringing that together. When you talk about seamlessly, it's about understanding that you've got real estate today, investment today that you can't afford to lose. It needs to become more modern, more digital in nature. At the same point, you've got new products that need to develop. You've got new offerings that you have to do, a whole change in your own ecosystem approach that has to be developed. Tackling the two simultaneously with some abstraction in between to facilitate the move shields your customers from the changes that are happening underneath, your own staff, while making the changes in a substantive fashion. I mean, the old joke. You see a duck swimming across a lake, it's all placid and looks like it's fun. You ever see underneath, the legs are paddling like this. MassMutual's finished their paddling and has done so seamlessly for all to see.
Good. Bill, coming back to you, with 170 years of legacy and in insurance sector, digital transformation is, insurance sector has used technology as a backbone to transform. Now, you have been successfully migrating mission-critical insurance applications to AWS Cloud. Let me ask you these questions. What were the factors that influenced your decision on choosing the right workload, right applications, and what went in behind the decision?
Well, it's to reduce the mainframe footprint, reduce the data center footprint, also to decrease the operating cost and have high availability, fault tolerant, scalability, and elasticity for the applications, and obviously be more competitive by having more flexibility to really implement enhancements and services quicker to production, and obviously improve the customer experience on top of that.
So what were the business challenges that you faced when you went through the process?
Really to improve the value and functionality of legacy applications by converting, re-engineering, re-platforming the applications and databases to modern, maintainable, affordable platforms to increase value really to the business and the organization.
And these challenges was easy to mitigate, or
no, because you've got issues like legacy of UI issues, security and compliance, and you've got the talent management as well. You've got to your talent pool has to become knowledgeable in the cloud space and all the services that AWS has to offer. So there's kind of some training there, and that can be a challenge where you have resources on legacy applications who sometimes maybe don't have the incentive to learn new technology in the cloud, and that can kind of be a challenge. So we have to think you've got to staff up for that when migrating applications to the cloud to be prepared for that, and you may have to start that journey early.
After completing this bill, what's the business feedback about the past versus today, what they have in hand as a product?
Well, by migrating to the cloud, it gives you more, flexibility, scalability. Like at MassMutual, we have campaigns, so we can scale up for those campaigns that happen on a yearly basis and everything. So there is volume and, in sales that we're prepared for that. And that's critical to our business, that we can support that growth.
Good. I'm going to come back to you, Maddie, but I want to ask Phil the same question. Phil, what are the key factors or criteria when you choose a workload for migrating to cloud? Is it very similar to what you heard from Bill, or is it something different that you see in the market?
No, the similarities are there. The criteria will vary based upon your organization. I will say one factor that doesn't typically get mentioned is your cultural ability to adapt. Okay, more often than not, the move to CI/CD, agile, and other elements can be an impediment to any kind of a modernization or replatforming effort. And at the end of the day, the R's, right? Replace, retire, rewrite, recode, replatform. Part of that is making sure that you understand the nature of the workload, making sure that you make the right decision by it. Sometimes a problem is too complex to bother fixing because of the nature of the system, and so you have to treat it differently. Wasting your time, your dollars, and your effort, modernize something that at the end of the day has a horizon or is going to cost you too much, impedes your ability to modernize, to become more digital. So I think the factors remain the same. A lot has to do with tying back to complexities, compliance issues, right? Do you have an older workforce where skill set's diminishing and now the auditors are going to come in and say, well, how are you going to support this going forward? What's the liability on that? We have a system and we have an industry that really is risk adverse, looks at it very hardly, and moves forward appropriately. And I think that factors in here differently than some of the other industries that we're looking at.
Yeah.
Good. Maddie, I'm going to ask you the same question because when a service provider like DXC and a customer like MassMutual, the way you deal with the selection of workload, selection of projects, landing zones, right cloud is very different than how AWS sees it. Can I ask you this question? From AWS point of view, how do you help the customers in the identification and selection of the workload, applications, landing zones in the right way?
So a great question. Thank you, Sam. So I'm going to address this in two parts. Number one is, of course, most customers that we see right now, the complexity of the workloads are so many that a single pattern rarely fits the full spectrum of solutions. So depending on where the customer is coming from, whether it is a cost reduction aspect or agility improvements or time to market challenges, what we do is we study the landscape, we run the assessments, we work with, for example, we work with DXC to look at the entire landscape. We've got tool-based assessments, we've got a lot of tools that automate this. It allows us to map the applications, the dependencies of the applications, and how the applications are actually working, not just in static code, but also in dynamic code basis. So these help us understand which applications can give what kind of yield and how to then put them in that bucket of refactor, rehost, replatform, or even maybe you don't need to migrate the mainframe. You could look at augmenting the mainframe. You could look at data extraction and using that to drive new changes. So we've got you can move data using FTP, you can move data using CDC, and build new applications on top of that. So the idea is always to start with a pattern agnostic approach, to look at what the customer is seeking to achieve and work backwards from there, and then figure out what we want to do with the application landscape and align with the customer timelines and customer outcomes that they're seeking. To accelerate these, we built the AWS Mainframe Modernization Service, and that basically automates quite a lot of this code analysis. You can analyze, you can transform, you can develop, you can test, and deploy and operate in the same AWS console-based, you can deploy from the console directly. So there are a lot of mechanisms by which we accelerate these journeys as well.
I'm going to come back to the technology side of it very soon, but I want to come back to the business, Bill. Yeah, you said scalability, reliability, and having a robust environment was the business benefit. More from agents and your business stakeholders, what are the other benefits? What are the other benefits in terms of functionalities, features, cost? Are there any other benefits that you saw at end of the program, end of the project?
Well, there's speed, business continuity, reduction in the data center, digital transformation, flexibility, those kind of crucial things. It positions us future for digital transformation by moving those applications to the cloud. And that's an advantage to both our advisors and customers.
Good. So let's spend a few minutes on the technology side, Maddie. I'm going to ask you this. From mainframe modernization trends, what are the trends that you're seeing today? The past was very different than today, and the future is going to be very different than today.
Yeah.
So now, what are the trends that you're seeing from the mainframe modernization side?
So let me address this in two parts. The trends first. It's very interesting. Of course, there's always a cost pressure, and that's table stakes that you want to get OpEx cost reductions. But interestingly, we are seeing a lot of changes happening in the market due to insurtechs. So about in 2021, about 11.1 billion went into funding some of these insurtechs. They're looking at telematics, use of AI, ML, omni-channel experiences, which is really changing the way the customer experiences the insurance markets. So that's changing both the valuations, the growth rates in the market, and it's putting a lot of pressure on traditional insurers. So that's one part of it. The second part is that we are seeing government regulations increase quite a bit, which includes looking at security, governance, and we can see the same kind of KYC story that was in the banking segment move to the insurance side as well. So when you look at these kind of trends, there is an imperative then to start looking at modernizing and being able to address these kind of issues, to be able to say, how do I create an omni-channel experience for my customers? So this is not just about modernizing the mainframe. Of course, you will use technologies to refactor code, bring it into open tech space, maybe using tools like Blue Age for refactor, converting COBOL into Java, and then first moving to macro services, then moving to microservices, but more importantly, extracting data, creating those omni-channel experiences outside of the mainframe as well. So these are the kind of trends we see. Technologies that are being deployed, when I look at the global market right now, we're seeing about 32% move towards replatform, get the cost cost out in order to fund new projects. We're seeing an equal number of people moving towards refactor, because you've got to start making that step change now from COBOL onwards to Java and new future technologies. It doesn't give you beautiful Java, but it at least gets you started on readable Java, and then you can use the strangle pattern to start thinking about modernizing that code. And then we're seeing augment pattern, which is coming up, where a lot of people are using tools such as Model 9, which are able to do FTP, tools such as Precisely, which are able to do data replication, ETL, plus synchronization of data on a real-time basis in order to let you run omni-channel experiences, for example. So similarly, also we're seeing something very interesting, the replace pattern is coming in, where we're seeing customers actually move bits of businesses. So for example, smaller lifespan insurance policies, like motor, that can be moved to something like Guidewire, which is a software as a service tool, which is available now, that produces not just the insurance core technology features, it also has omni-channel and analytics built in, and that's a SaaSified solution already available. So you let the runoff on the older policies on the mainframe, and instead of migrating code, you're actually migrating just the policies and the products. So that's another pattern we have seen. So these are the kind of trends we are seeing in the market right now.
Good, good. And how do you make use of the partner ecosystem to accelerate the transformation journey of the customers? Partner ecosystem like DXC or the likes of DXC. How do you enable them? How do you make use of this ecosystem?
So partners are super critical to AWS. We grow through partners. We depend upon partners and work in partnership, because you bring in domain expertise and coming out of your experience of managing applications. Because mainframes is not an infrastructure story, it is an application story. And there's a huge amount of domain expertise that partners bring, which then combines very well with the infrastructure domain expertise that we can bring. So for example, we work very closely with DXC. You're an APN partner, you're a migration competency partner. We work with you on the MAP program. You're also a mainframe competency partner. So together we have been building a lot of joint solutions together. And so for example, I can think of one specific case which was super impressive, right? So here in this particular insurance company, we of course gave the customer a lot of benefit, a joint benefit, where they were able to get 40% cost savings, and they were able to improve time to market by 15%. There, you see the collaboration. The biggest risk element here is testing and live cutover for customers where code is not very well documented. So here, the power of partnership really comes through. When you see DXC, the way they put in the testing regimes, of course, DXC did the functional testing. They also did, code analysis for performance. They did data validation live. All of this was automated. We worked with AWS Direct Connect in order to do network connectivity testing. There was parallel run, which we did, funded out of the MAP program, supporting our customers through all stages. So it's just quite a lot of work that we do together to build the best practices and learn from each other in that respect to reduce, final customer risk.
Thanks. I'm going to come back to Phil. Phil, DXC and personally you have rich experience and history in partnering with the clients and partnering with the likes of AWS to make a program successful, right? It's a three-way partnership many a times. How do you see these technology trends? How do you see partners like DXC using this technology that is available in the market, working with the customer, training them, making them aware of this, to make these programs successful? It's a three-way partnership always. How do you see that playing and coming together?
There's a couple of elements that we factor when we do that. And I think to be fair, to kind of give you a context for this, 7 years ago, we began our own digital enablement journey. Right? We began to develop DXC Assure, that's our digital product set. Omnichannel, ecosystem-based, RESTful API, all the technical richness that you would expect. And the reasons were severalfold. One, our clients want off the mainframe. They want to reduce costs, so there's that natural effort. it becomes a consumption-based model. We're truly offering it as a service. And our ecosystem expands so that it's not just one solution, it's best in breed. We came to the conclusion that no one firm can innovate everything, okay? And so we stopped trying to do that. And when we look at insurtechs, fintechs, health techs that fit into our ecosystem, and it's much broader than just insurance these days, we always went for, is it a gap we have, right? Second, is it something that they're doing better than we are? And if the answer to either one of those questions was yes, then we want to have that conversation and build out our own ecosystem. And part of that is the input from clients. A number of our solutions over the years, including our current modernization effort, were partners or other entities introduced to us for our customer advisory boards. And if it isn't built together, then it doesn't really work. And particularly now, we're doubling down on that because examples like MassMutual. The needs of the industry are such that we need to understand where the industry and our client base is going in order to support and meet that need, okay? To be the partner provider that we are to our customers. You're going to see a lot more of that. I mean, everybody is building out. I mean, Bill's team has certainly begun to build out an ecosystem of their own, and you do that through standards, you do that through your modernization and digital efforts. So you're seeing that more pervasively, and frankly, not just insurance, of course, but that ecosystem driver is important to us, and we're betting our product direction on it.
Bill, you as a chief architect was leading this program at MassMutual. And you can imagine with 1.8 billion policy dividends holders and with 895 billion of insurance in play, anything that goes wrong is extremely, you can imagine. So the question to you is, how did you use these technology options available, partners like DXC, to make these programs successful?
These applications are just not, they're actually admin platforms, they're kind of crown jewel applications to the business. It means they're critical to our business and operations. So when we're using the kind of technologies and everything, we have containerization, we have a DevOps framework, which includes tool chains like, Jira, Artifactory, Git, Jenkins, etc. We're building event-driven architecture with loose coupling, and we have an API mindset, and we're also kind of looking to kind of reduce our kind of technologies and really reduce our technology footprint and the digital capabilities, because sometimes you can have several technologies supporting that same capability. So we're trying to reduce that and move to one technology that's more strategic and sunset these legacy technologies at the same time. So,
Makes sense, yeah. So as we say, success brings in more success. This program, after this, how the future of mainframe transformation in MassMutual is looking like? Is it very different than what you assumed when it started the program?
Yeah, well, we've been successful with 2 migrations to DXC's AWS Cloud. One was a more modern application that was relatively easy. One was a very legacy admin kind of platform that was very mainframe orientated with 3270 screens, so that was a bit more challenging, and that had a lot of closely coupled applications tied to it as well that had to be migrated along with that legacy application. But because of the success of those 2 admin platforms, we're looking to migrate another couple of crown jewel admin platforms to DXC's AWS Cloud. One of those is currently in our data center and on our mainframe as a service, but we're looking to kind of migrate those to DXC's AWS Cloud, and obviously that's a better digital experience in the future as we add more digital capabilities to those admin platforms. And obviously the goal is to kind of reduce cost, build more flexibility to be more competitive, and really get those kind of enhancements and changes into and services into production quicker. So it's adding a lot of value to both the customer and the advisor.
Excellent, excellent. Coming back to Phil, you know there are a lot of successful programs what we speak about, projects where we have modernized mainframe, migrated mainframe to cloud. But there are many programs that we know we learned from our failures. So if I have to ask you top 2 or 3, and I'm going to come back to you with the same question, Maddie. Top 2 or 3 reasons if a program have to fail. Is there an easy way to summarize? I know situations are very different, environment is very different, the state of applications and the business leverage is very different, so it's very difficult to summarize top 2 or 3 reasons why mainframe landscape migrations to AWS Cloud or a cloud fails. But if you have to put 2 or 3 reasons, is it easy to summarize?
I think there's 3 that we can touch on that are fairly obvious, but we've seen before. I mean, to be fair, modernization isn't necessarily new, whether it was OO, whether it was the internet, C, etc. But first and foremost is not understanding the business objectives. What is it you're trying to achieve through this modernization? It's really not about the technology, it's about the end goal. Okay, and these days that's faster revenue generation, speed to market, it's reduced costs and operational elements. But when you don't understand that, it's hard to achieve those goals. The second, and I mentioned this earlier, is tackling something you shouldn't have tackled. Looking at something and go, that's the one I want. It's low-hanging fruit only to discover, A, it wasn't, okay, and then B, you've spent 6, 8, 12 months and $1 million exploring a direction that ultimately doesn't play off. And the last one is back to some of those cultural elements, okay? As you begin to move into the digital realm and you start that journey, you understand that things and how you develop, the integration between business and technology is far superior than what we used to do. And recognizing, particularly from an IT perspective, that you have to give up some control to achieve those business outcomes isn't always easy. And then integrating the 2 sides to be a collaborative effort back to partnership, even internally, can impede your success if you don't do it properly.
And from your vantage point, do you see anything different, Maddie? Or
I'd say I echo that. In fact, if I may quote you a third-party study, which has been done by a partner, AWS Partner called Advanced. They actually went and talked to a number of business and technical leaders in large enterprises with more than $1 billion revenue, and were migrating mainframes. So they found that 74% of the projects actually got started but didn't get completed. And they identified 2 main reasons there. One was not sufficient funding, as in not planning it properly and not being funded properly. The second was lack of alignment between business leaders and tech leaders as to what is the vision of what you want to achieve with this mainframe modernization. For me, the change management aspect that you just shared is so important that if that is not managed accurately, it does not lead to very good outcomes. But I would like to say that, having been in the mainframe domain, that there are no failed projects, they're just halted experiments in that context. And that actually, it's a domain where you can always pick up where you left off and learn from the past experiences. So we've seen a lot of customers who actually learn from past projects and where they failed. For example, we've seen a lot of customers who stopped at, who were trying to do manual refactoring and realized that's not really the right way to go down, and then started using automated tools. So there's a lot of learning you can get from past experiences.
Excellent. So Bill, what next? I'm going to go back to the question that I touched upon earlier. Your future roadmap of moving 90% of the applications to AWS Cloud is what that you started the journey with. How are you doing on that? Is it an ambitious target, keeping how things are going in the market in mind?
Yeah.
Impending recession in mind? Lack of funding that probably will come on our way in the future? So how do you see this 90%?
Well, it's still in progress, and as you mentioned, funding for these applications is always a challenge. But we're generally picking applications that have a DevOps methodology kind of as a priority of moving those applications to the cloud. So really it's, well, kind of learning as we go, getting experience of those migrations and learning from them and, documenting lessons learned for future migrations. But we're really kind of concentrating on the applications that have a DevOps methodology as a priority.
Good. And Maddie, for you, for AWS, the same factors what I mentioned, the next couple of years, things can slow down a bit. The technology options available in the market are many, but the digital transformation for clients, especially in a sector like insurance, can't wait, because the digital journey that they adopted, the business reasons are going to push them to complete those as early as possible. Now, with these challenges in the market, where do you see what is next for AWS? You have to continue helping customers like MassMutual, migrating to cloud. But on the other side, there are a lot of roadblocks, potential roadblocks that you see in the future. So how is AWS trying to overcome and support the market?
So it's a multi-pronged strategy. The way we are looking at it is, first of all, we take the pain out of some of the activities that add a lot of time to these kind of transformations. So that includes, getting the tools, figuring out which tools to use, buying them, stitching them together with EC2, so on and so forth, creating the environments in order to run these programs. So what we've done is we've created a managed services environment in M2, where, as I said, you can actually run everything from the console and make that procurement process and bringing together all the tools and getting them into a managed runtime much easier. So that takes away a little bit of the pain. So it's not the solution, but it's not the full solution. Part of the solution that takes away some of the time factors and procurement factors, and also the overall cost of managing and maintaining applications in AWS. The second thing we are doing is we are creating a lot of accelerators that we are then working with our partners and building these out. So, for example, creating the right landing zones, which make sure that the latency concerns are addressed, which make sure that the availability concerns are addressed. So we're building accelerators around these. Then we have got not just this, but a lot of partner tools where you have a vast spectrum of code base, of different code bases needing different tools, being able to curate these tool sets, being able to work with our partners and bringing them to fore. So we work with our partners, both GSI partners and tool vendors, in order to make sure that our customers get a curated tool set and that we're able to bring to fore. So these are some of the things we are doing. In addition to that, what we are trying to do is to make sure that we have a very systematic, prescriptive way of taking the customer on the journey. And we use the mainframe map program for that, where we are able to help the customers rapidly assess using automated tools, rapidly build the landing zones, build the migration plans in the mobilized stage and fund that. And then also fund a lot of parallel runs so that we can help our customers get onto the production systems in a very fast-paced manner. So these are some of the things we are doing to accelerate these journeys.
Thanks. Phil, a couple of last thoughts from your side. I want to probably lead you to touch upon a couple of these. Looking at the successful programs, projects that DXC have completed, mainframe always had been a workhorse that could manage transactional processing day and night and irresistibly, smartly. You see the new environment, functionality-wise, reliability-wise, supporting the customer demand and the future work volume?
Yeah, I do, and so do we. There are still going to be challenges. Okay, most of them tend to be around scalability in batch, right? assembler is a wonderful performer. It does its things very, very well. But what we're learning is you get the horizontal and vertical scalability available in the cloud. And more often than not, they don't have to be run linearly. You can actually separate your batch processes, run 100,000 transactions and 10,000 transaction batches simultaneously. So that's making a change in our successes. The other thing I think that we're seeing, and we've used the term transformation and digital transformation a lot today. I actually don't like that term. I think it really is onerous, and it suggests a weight to it that isn't there as much as it used to be, right? We prefer digital mastery. Right? Everyone here is doing something that's digital. Everybody you're going to talk to while you're here, every booth that you're going to see on the floor, they're digital. Okay, it's happening around you. So how people like MassMutual, Bill, and others master that digital environment, adapt it to their needs is significant. And that's where the success is going to be for the industry, whether it's maintaining a new skill set in order to be compliant, the scalability, speed to market, all of these elements come to bear. But it's mastering the technologies as they change around you. An ecosystem is fantastic to have, okay, but it's exponentially growing. So how do you manage that? How do you make the right choices? How do you master what's happening around you to your own success? And MassMutual's done an exceptional job at that. So I think that that's the one that's important. Again, more cultural than it is technological, right? I can master Java, I can master APIs in a lot of ways. Many of you here will be certified. Lots of people here are certified. But at the end of the day, it's the business outcome. How do I leverage the new technology, the changes around me in the world, in order to better succeed for the coming changes? We may not know what those changes are, but we have to be able to flex and meet them, particularly in an industry like insurance, where it's avoiding those risks, et cetera. And the most obvious one is that from a liability perspective, the pandemic's impact on the sector is still as yet unknown. There's years of litigation to happen, et cetera, to see where the fallout will be on certain key points. Well, our systems are not the most flexible in the face of change. So you need to be ready for that and mindful of what's coming. It's interesting that the industry as a whole is very innovative, but there's a tendency to avoid being the disruptor, right? But they don't want to be disrupted either. Right? You want to be in a position where you implement your changes, you keep a pace with the technology, you do some innovations, but more importantly, when the next entry happens into the world, the new competitor that you're not expecting, you have the flexibility to make changes in your own capabilities and products to adapt to that change so you're not left behind.
And Maddie, any last thoughts from your side before we wrap up?
I guess it's a brave world out there. I would say experimentation is going to be very key in trying to determine where we want to take our workloads, and quite a lot of thinking in terms of how we want to handle specific workloads. There's a lot of front-end work that we all need to do when saying what do we want to do with our legacy application estate in order to meet the challenges of the future. And that preparation is going to be worth a lot, and putting that time and effort and investment in that assessment as in partnership with AWS, with partners like DXC, and with the customers working together is what is going to get us the right results.
Thank you. Bill, thank you so much for sharing your experience, coming today, and giving the true story of how things went at MassMutual. We want to wish you all the best for your future journey.
Okay,
and thanks for your partnership with DXC.
Yeah,
and we hope that we'll continue to do a good job at MassMutual. And Maddie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have a long way to go. We have a lot of work to do.
Oh, yes.
Phil, thank you so much. So thanks to all of you for attending the session today. We're going to spend a few minutes on questions if you have.